But also, like you observed, it's hard to speak after lunch because where I come from, they argue that when you eat, blood flows from the brain to the abdomen to try and digest food, so you end up being sleepy. So I hope all your blood is ready back to the brain. To dive into your question, I think the biggest challenge we face as a continent is that our policy, legal, and normative instruments are too generic to remedy tech-facilitated gender-based violence. They bundle tech-facilitated gender-based violence with all the other categories of cybercrime. And like I always argue, the law cannot offer what the law does not have. But just before that, I'll give credit where it is due. As a result of the, how do we move this thing? That will be perfect. So as a result of the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, also known as the Malabo Convention of 2014, 39 member states have cybercrime related legislation and 37 member states have data protection and privacy legislation. This is especially important because I do not know a greater catalyst for tech-facilitated gender-based violence than the abuse of personal data and the violation of privacy. So these laws go a long way in ensuring that individuals and platforms are held accountable, but also ensure that there is a basis for redress when need arises. However, when they are generic, when they do not explicitly cover tech-facilitated gender-based violence, then we miss the unique nature of tech-facilitated gender-based violence. Tech-facilitated gender-based violence is unique both in context and implications. We, for example, heard this morning that even the empowered woman is not safe when it comes to tech-facilitated gender-based violence. That's a bit strange because, for example, in Africa, violence against women and girls generally occurs at intersections with other vulnerabilities: poverty, women living in rural areas, post-conflict situations. But now even the woman in politics is not safe, the woman in business is not safe, the celebrity, the billionaire, the journalist, the blogger. So there is a unique element when it comes to tech-facilitated gender-based violence that we cannot afford to bundle it with every other category of violence against women. And in an attempt to remedy this generic nature, and of course, among other reasons, we are now at the tail end of the process of the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. This is instrumental for us because it is explicit about tech-facilitated gender-based violence. It enjoins member states to prevent, address, and even prosecute tech-facilitated gender-based violence. So we are confident that it will offer us a basis for strengthening member state capacities, a basis for establishing functional ecosystems for knowledge sharing, for advocacy, for awareness raising, and for psychosocial support. The second challenge at our disposal is emerging technologies. 10 years after the Malabo Convention, we have things like artificial intelligence, which offer, of course, immense opportunities, but also has many challenges, including those related to tech-facilitated gender-based violence, challenges of bias, challenges of AI in itself as a tool for violence. So the African Union came up with a continental AI strategy, and this is aimed to ensure that as a continent, we leverage the benefits that artificial intelligence offers, but also minimize the risks that come with it, including risks for women. So now that we've looked at those instruments, I want to go a little bit into examples of why we believe that tech-facilitated gender-based violence should be pursued as a unique kind of violence, not just like any other kind of violence. I mean, I've heard since morning colleagues trying to bundle it with violence against women in general, which is understandable, but misleading at several points and levels because we miss the point if we do that. I'll give you the example of Uganda, where I'm originally from Uganda, much as I sit in Addis Ababa, and we had an anti-pornography law. This law criminalized the publishing of pornographic content, including online. So in principle, this law is supposed to protect women, right? But in practice, it victimizes them. And this happened when revenge porn was rampant. Revenge porn is when you have non-consensual publishing of pornographic content, usually by intimate partners. And what happened in Uganda is that whenever we had this content on social media, the first person police summoned was the woman. In most cases, we never got to find out who the man was behind the release of such content. The person that society condemned was the woman. And to bring in another element, society holds women to very stringent scrutiny of what happens in their private lives. When content like that comes out, all we say, oh, that woman is a whore. And I'm saying this so that it can sink in. We don't talk about the man who shot the content. We don't talk about the man who released the content. So the implications are grave for women. We can't continue to look at this as just any other kind of cyber crime. We can't say, come on, this stuff happens to everyone. For women, it means a lot more. We hold them to stringent scrutiny. They are the ones we condemn. You get what I mean? It is their bodies we see, so you can imagine the psychological impact. I'll give the second example, whereby I'm glad Irene is here, and she spoke earlier when I was doing my master thesis about 2 years ago. And this is something I want to thank policy for. I discovered that women, more than men, end up withdrawing entirely from digital spaces in the face of violence and abuse. And they gave the example of politics when a man and woman are campaigning online or digitally, and they all receive slander and abuse and misleading information. The women usually withdraw from tech spaces altogether compared to men. Why am I sharing this again? We can't afford to continue to look at tech-facilitated gender-based violence just like any other category of cybercrime. But of course, from the African Union perspective, we have the silver lining of the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls that I already shared about, which we think is going to set us on a path of legislating specifically for tech-facilitated gender-based violence. In the interest of time, good thing you all already know my name, so even if that thing falls. So in the interest of time, we think we need to have a number of ways forward. And we believe that laws should explicitly tackle tech-facilitated gender-based violence, because the law won't offer what the law doesn't have. We can, in the meantime, try to remedy tech-facilitated gender-based violence under traditional laws, but we need to legislate specifically for it. The law should seek to empower survivors of technology facilitated gender-based violence. Like I gave you the example of Uganda, as opposed to criminalizing them, the law should create an environment